force. I would call myself a conservative nationalist, and I would differentiate that from a leftist nationalist in the following way. Conservative nationalism is the closest of proximity to American nationalism. We admire our country, we admire its symbols, we admire its culture, we expect limited government, we expect a constitution that protects the inherent and God given rights of our fellow citizens, and we're critical of our government when it's corrupt. It's not worship of the government, it's respect for the culture and for the nation and for the basic functions of a sovereign nation with an eye toward criticism. And the criticism is constant, as should be, as codified in the Constitution, which recognizes the right to free speech, free press, right to assembly, not because it's not a freedom to use the S word. It's freedom to dissent and to criticize the government when when it's excessive or when it oversteps its powers or when it's corrupt or when it's immoral. I would contrast this kind of nationalism, this is the conservative nationalism, with leftist hyper-nationalism. The leftists worship the state. They're hyper-nationalists. They're national socialists. They're international socialists. They believe in the power of the nanny state to control as many, if not all, aspects of our lives as possible. They want to control our health. They want to control our health care. They want to control our education with more of a national system that basically creates human resources. They want to control welfare. They want to control charity by creating national welfare programs that create permanent dependency and that award people for dependency and demoralize families and demoralize individuals. They want to control what is good and what is evil. In other words, they want to replace God with themselves as enlightened arbiters of what is right, what is wrong, and that is tailored to fit whatever their political agenda may be. Broadly speaking, it's an authoritarian agenda. It's the idea that the state is the savior, the state is the messiah, and that ultimately the state is just a vehicle to move the world toward this utopian state where we become a one world beehive. Everyone is de facto equal. There's nothing that separates us. There's no more borders, there's no more culture, there's no more faith, there's no more family. Everyone becomes one massive equal blob. I mean, it's like an ant colony. And of course, that is completely contrary to human nature and it's false. But that is hyper nationalism. The state is a vehicle toward moving man in the direction ultimately of collectivism and total control. There's a part of the environmental movement, the back to nature movement, that embraces this. I mean, there's also rational environmentalists like conservatives who want to steward over the earth and who want to engage in proper environmental policies that weigh and measure realities, such as the movement forward for the industrial era, and at the same time protecting environments. That's a more conservative approach. The left approach, like their approach to nationalism, is a totality approach, and of course the result has been that you've got areas as big as the state of Massachusetts in the old Soviet Union that are uninhabitable today. If local control over the environment is the way to go, then you're going to have a better environment. So, when they talk about right-wing nationalism, conservative nationalism, we should know what those things mean. We should understand that. I mean, recently I saw Dan Rather talk about patriotism versus nationalism, with the implication being that anyone that's not on the left is a nationalist. That's crap. The left is hyper-nationalist. The American nationalism, patriotism, is actually a conservative idea. It's love of country when the country is right. It's dissent when the government, which is representing the country, is wrong and is either wrong in terms of unconstitutional or wrong in terms of operating or conducting policies that run contrary to the interests of those who elect them to office. So, you know, we ought to be nationalists. I mean, the Trump movement is a nationalist movement in that we're returning sane policies that represent the people of the United States, which is where we live, um, in our government. We're returning power back to the people, and what they want and what they seek, and taking it away from these leftist establishment elites who are hyper nationalists, who worship not the people, not God, but they worship government. They worship the secular power of the state as a way to, I don't know. Well, I could get into the psychology of it. That's for another day. It's very interesting, actually. But in the practical sense, it's creating this hyper collectivism. And I also would point out that racism is endemic on the left. It's a nationalist, hyper nationalist view that somehow we as a people really are different because of our racial or ethnic background. They actually, and they've extended that to women and gays and lesbians and everyone else. And they actually believe that a black person and a white person are literally different. And that's crap. I mean, the conservative approach, the American approach, and not that we're perfect, far from it. Racism obviously is the great stain on our history, but and on the history of most nations that have more than one race. But the American approach philosophically, and I think in the movement generally, is to judge people not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character, because we all are sovereign citizens who want to thrive and accomplish and succeed in life, and therefore we look to associate ourselves with other people who are of a like mind or who have talent. It doesn't matter what their race or ethnic background is. We're not going to look to that as our main theme. And I'm putting that in the context that in human nature, people do look to those things, but in the conservative nationalist idea, that's not good. Whereas in the left, they glorify that. They think that there is something different about someone because of their race or their ethnicity. So, anyway, that's how I see conservative nationalism, and that's how I would contrast it with leftist hyper nationalism or national socialism. Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody.